Hello and welcome to Building a Software as a Service Application with Rails. This is episode 8, and in this episode we are going to work on adding invitation functionality to our app. This time I'm actually going to give you a little preview of what we're going to be working towards in the next couple episodes. What we're going to be building is an authorized users page where you'll be able to use this email form to input the user's email address and invite them to work on your team. When they are invited, it will show an invitation pending message over here, and once they've accepted the invitation, it will show a check mark here to indicate that they have indeed accepted the invitation. Okay, let's get started. Now, since I've last worked on this cast, it looks like my icon font is broken. Now, upon further investigation, it looks like the gem that I'm using to import Bootstrap is now outdated. So the first thing we're going to do is just update the way that we import Bootstrap here. So here's the GitHub page for the gem that I was using to import Bootstrap, and as you can see, it's deprecated, and apparently now there's an official Bootstrap SaaS gem. So we're going to change our gem files to make sure that we're using this gem. So in our gem file, we're just going to change our Bootstrap gem to Bootstrap SaaS, and then we'll just have to update our Bootstrap imports in our application.js and application SCSS files. After that, once you refresh, you should restart your server, and then once you refresh the page, we should have our icon fonts back. I'm not sure what the issue was, I just found it easier to update that gem. Now I'm just going to sign in, and then we can take a look at where we're at and what we need to start with. Looks like the first thing we'll want to do is create our users index page, and we should probably add a little link up here for that users index page. The first thing I'm going to do is create an invitations feature spec. So for this spec, we're going to borrow from the subdomain feature spec. Essentially, we're going to create an account with this database schema. We're going to set the user for that account. We are going to sign that user in. We are going to visit the user's URL, which is new. We're going to have to create that. That will be the path that they go to see all of the users that are authorized for their account. And we'll just check after that to make sure that the owner is in the authorized users list. And this needs to be owner, not user. Okay, so you can go ahead and run the test in the background, but we're going to have an error related to this user's URL. It's not going to exist yet, so we'll have to set it up in our routes file. I'm going to add that line here, and we're only going to use this route if we're only going to generate this route if we have a subdomain present, because the users list is associated with your particular account and subdomain. At this point, a run of our tests with using guard will just indicate that we don't have a users controller. So next we'll have to go ahead and create that. So in our app controllers directory, I'm going to create a very basic users controller, and I'm just going to have an index action for now, which will grab all of the users. With our controller created, we sort of get a strange error now. It seems to be kicking us back to the sign-in form, and it's saying that we need to sign in or sign up before continuing. It seems to indicate an issue with the order that our account is being created. So perhaps the user isn't being created on the account schema. So let's check that out. In our invitations feature spec, we can see that we are creating an account with schema. So we're using the account with schema factory. So let's check that out. Now this factory is adding an association called owner, which is a user. What's not clear is when exactly this user record is being created. Likely the issue is that the user is being created before we run the database creation in Switch. So probably our user is being created in the wrong schema. So we can resolve this by saying strategy build at the end of this association, and that will only build the user factory, and then when our account is saved, it will then go ahead and save the user as well. Back in our console, that seems to have done the trick here. Now we're getting the error we expect, which is a missing template. So now we just need to add the view for our users page. Now I can just go ahead and create the users index view. Now in here, I'm just going to paste in some HTML. Basically, I've created a layout with Bootstrap grid, and I'm calling it the authorized users page, and we're going to provide them a name, email, and status. And the name and email are simple enough. The status is going to require a little bit more work. So let's save this, check it out in the browser, and then work on the status. Now, if you're not already signed in, you'll have to go ahead and sign in. But once you've done that, you should be at the, you can now track time page. And for now, we'll have to manually visit the users page. And there we go. We can see the list of authorized users, which for now is just the owner. And now we can go ahead and work on the status. So back in the view, we need to display the user status right here. So we could go through some logic right here and try to set this up, but I think a better way to do it would be to use a helper. So let's just imagine a helper call here, and then we'll go ahead and implement it. So for this, I'm going to create a user helper. And we'll define our user status call. Now, the first thing we want to check is if the user is the owner of the account. Right now, we really don't have any way to do that, but I think what we'll end up doing is exposing a helper method called maybe something like current account. So if the current account owner is the user, then we'll display this OK check mark. Otherwise, we'll display invitation pending. So what about this current account method? We'll have to expose something for this in the action controller. I'm sorry, the application controller, rather. So in our application controller, you'll recall that based on the subdomain, we're looking up the current account. So what we can do is just go ahead and extract this to a separate method. So our current account method is going to look up the account based on the subdomain, like was previously being done in the load schema method, but now it's going to store it in an instance variable, and then we can go ahead and access this wherever we need it. However, in order to be able to access this from our view and helpers, we'll have to call helper method current account to set it as a helper method. And with that, all of our tests are now passing again. Now what I would like to do is a little bit of refactoring around how we write our specs. Since a lot of our specs moving forward are going to be focused on one particular account, it's going to be annoying to continuously write to specify the subdomain in all of our URLs and stuff like that. So let's see if we can set a default subdomain so that we don't have to specify it for every single URL. So before each spec, what we'll call is set subdomain, and we'll set it to the account subdomain, and we'll have to create this helper method, this macro. Now ideally we'll be able to remove these calls and set this to user's path instead of user's URL. So in our macros file, we can create this set subdomain method. And what we'll be doing here is setting the capybara app host to the subdomain that we have specified. However, setting the subdomain like this is going to require us to change up our sign user in method a little bit. So we can check if the subdomain option was passed in, and if it was, we'll use the existing method call, but if not, we just use the new user session path. Now, the one last thing we'll have to do is in our spec helper, we can, after each spec run, we can set the app host back just to ensure consistency between specs. Before we finish up, I'm just going to add a link to the users page in our header. I'm just going to paste this code in because it's not very interesting. Basically, it's just a Bootstrap navbar list with a link to the user's path. And the other thing we'll need to do is add some styling to just add a margin so that it looks good. So you can go ahead and run the tests in the background and you'll see that everything is still passing. And when we check out our page in the browser, we can see that we now have the users link and we've got the authorized users page set up, and we are at least displaying the owner, and we've got a good base to proceed in the next episode with adding the invitation functionality.